Sometimes it's appropriate to be abstruse, which is nothing more than saying that the stories are going to mess with our head. Not like the Zen stories, which are often like koans that trip up our mind, but more like the Sufi stories that contain the truth but confuse our minds. So let's experience what these several stories do for us with the experience that they do confuse the mind, just like the present situation in our world. But out of them there is the possibility to arise an awareness, a recognition of that truth. There are 3 fishers living in a pond. One of them was clever, one of them was a little intelligent, and the other was quite stupid. But one day a fisherman came down to fish, and there wasn't much of a place for these fishers to hide in that pond. But the first intelligent fish called on his experiences and his knowledge to have a plan. So he swam up to the edge of the pond, and with a great effort he leapt out and landed at the fisherman's feet. But he held his breath, so that the fisherman, when he picked him up, thought that he was dead. So the fisherman thought to himself, why is the fish throwing itself out at my feet and dead? So he picked it up and threw it back in the pond again. And the fish swam around and went down to his 2 friends who were trying to hide somewhere where there was no really anywhere to hide, and he told them of his experience and what he'd done. So the second half-intelligent fish thought that he might follow suit. And so he did just that. He swam up to the edge of the pond, and he, with a great effort, tossed himself out and landed at the feet of the fisherman. But he forgot to stop breathing. So the fisherman picked him up and put him in his basket, but he omitted, in his haste to put his line back in the pond, to put the lid of the basket down. So the half-intelligent fish lying in the basket had a thought to himself that he did have an escape route, so he gathered all his resources together and he managed to fling himself out of the basket and slip down into the pond again. Well, he too went down with the intelligent fish, and there was a stupid fish there, and they told him of his experience, and they tried to explain to him what he should do to endeavor not to be caught. And the stupid fish said to them, yes, I understand. And as he was going to swim over to the edge of the pond like the others, the 2 other fish said, now don't forget not to breathe. And so the fish swam over and tossed himself out at the feet of the fisherman and stopped breathing. But the fisherman, by then, he'd already lost 2 fish, so he didn't even bother to check whether the fish was breathing or not. He just put him in the basket and closed the lid. But then, of course, he threw his line back into the pond, but by this time the 2 other fish had found a little crevice in which to hide themselves so that they didn't get caught on the line. And after a while the fisherman gave up, and then he looked in his basket and found that the third fish wasn't breathing. So he closed the lid and took it home and fed it to his cat. Then there's a story about a very great and rich king who decided to build a temple to the Lord of the universe. And so, with 5,000 workers, he built this magnificent edifice in honor of the Lord of the universe. Now, when the temple was finished, the king decided that it would be appropriate to have a statue of the Lord of the universe to place inside his temple. So he broadcast abroad, looking to a suitable sculptor to make such a statue for him. But it was a long while, and no sculptor came along offering his services to undertake this task. But then one day, a sculptor did arrive and offer his services to the king, saying that he would gladly create a statue of the Lord of the universe. Now, of course, the king, wanting to be kingly, said, well, you've got to finish this task and I'll give you a great deal of money, but if you don't, I'll lop your head. But the sculptor said, I'm not seeking any great recompense. I only have one request, and that is that I should be given 1 month inside the temple on my own, with no disturbance and no interruptions. Oh, thought the king, this was a very easy thing to do. He could wait 30 days for his statue of the Lord of the universe. So the sculptor was placed inside the temple, and the door was closed. Now, after a while, people could hear banging and clanging going on that one could say was appropriate to a sculptor at work. But then the noises got louder and louder. Besides there being banging and clanging, there was crashing and banging. And the advisors of the king started to ask him, what is that sculptor doing? He sounds like he's bashing the whole temple down. Shouldn't we go and see what he's about? But the king said, no. We promised him that we would give him 30 days to complete his work, and this is what we've undertaken to do. But then the crashing and banging and the noises got louder and louder. And then they even started in the night time. And the advisors to the king were asking, how can he be crashing and banging at night when he's got no light? What is he doing? It sounds like he's destroying the whole place. Shouldn't we go and see what he's about? The king again said, no. But then the noises were so great, the king himself even said, I had 5,000 workers here working on this temple, and none of them made as much noise as this sculptor is making. And so, with the precious from his advisors stating, he's wrecking the temple. Shouldn't we go in and make sure that he hasn't destroyed the whole place? And so the king finally decided that yes, perhaps he should go and see what this was all about. So he took his advisors and they went to the door of the temple, which was locked and bolted, and they had to kind of crash the door down. And when they went inside, they saw the sculptor at work on a piece of work that was quite grotesque. In fact, it was quite ugly. Legs and arms awry. And the king looked at it and he said, "What is this aberration? I've never seen anything so ugly in my life. You deserve to have your head lopped." "Wait," said the sculptor. "You promised me 30 days to finish my work, and now it's only 21 days. And of course, the king had to realize this is indeed the state of affairs. So he said to the sculptor, "Well, what are we going to do with this piece of work?" And the sculptor said, "Put it on display in the temple, because everyone will perceive it in a different way. Some will see it as ugly, and others will see it as beautiful." And then, all of a sudden, in front of their very eyes, the sculptor disappeared. The sculptor himself was the Lord of the universe. There's no question posed to us to ask, what is the meaning of this or these stories for us? Merely, like everything, for them, like life itself, in whatever form it is, that brings something forth from us, something oftentimes quite different from the circumstances in which we find ourselves, something spontaneously arising. Is this the case for you? Presented as we are with the confusion of the state of affairs at the moment, and yet at any given moment in our life, whoever stands in front of us, whatever circumstances are there, in that moment there's clarity, there's a response, there's an answer. Is that so with these stories? Addling the mind, not tripping the mind. Can we live like this? Recognizing that in any given moment there's clarity. There's a response. Life can be confused. There can be sounds all around. We can be in a social situation with noise, and yet, in the instant of a connection, there's a response, clear, refined, certain, a truth. Isn't it so? So in this moment, is there something that responds? Or do we just shake our head and let it be, knowing that all of life is chemistry? The stories are chemistry. And for me, at this moment, my heart sings because I can't feel here any mind trying to grasp something like we would have before. Do you see what's being said here? And it's okay. It feels okay, doesn't it? There's no need. Can we live like this? Yes, we can. When it's appropriate, the response is there and it's presented with clarity and certainty and truth, isn't it? Mm. And when it's not, we don't have to. It's not necessary. It's quite easy just to remain. Wouldn't you agree? So something's happened, isn't it? Could it be to our mind has lost its power, or is it something else? Feels okay though, doesn't it?
Feels really